Hey there, everyone. This is Janelle with Lasting Impression Horsemanship. And if you were like me when I started doing the lunge line classes with my yearling a few years ago, and I would look up on YouTube and see what kind of tips and tricks and anything I could do to figure out how I could ready myself and my horse better to get kind of a little bit of a step up from the rest of the competition, and just to get an understanding kind of what the judges all look for, and if there's anything I can do with my horse to kind of prep them to get them ready for a show. Young horses like the yearlings and stuff, it's kind of hard to be able to 100% gauge whether or not they're going to behave. Their minds are somewhat like working with a squirrel, and they're not always the most reliable horses to be able to depend on if you're going to have a good run or not. But there are some things that you can do with them to help yourself kind of give you a better odds of having a good run every time you go out. And it has to do with just plain groundwork, making sure your horse has good groundwork and good ground manners. This year's Brecken, he's a 3-year-old warm blood draft cross. He has quite the personality, and he's come quite a long way since I've gotten him. He went from being a horse that would sit there and really bite you and try and push into you. So for him to be standing here pretty quiet and not trying to bite on me, that's a big deal from what he was when I got him. So we make sure that they have the kind of the fundamentals down with their groundwork. So they have to be able to move every single part of their body, whether that's both the hindquarters and forequarters on both sides. They have to be able to back up and come forward off a feel. And then I also like to be able to get them to kind of do a little bit of a side pass sideways a little bit too. So working with your yearlings and doing your groundwork is gonna benefit you a lot more for when you do the actual lunge lining itself. You're actually further ahead doing this type of stuff ahead of time, and then practicing putting them out on a lunge line. You wouldn't think it goes like this, but it actually it does, because what this does by getting them to yield their hindquarters and forequarters and backing and coming forward and stuff, that gets them using their mind and using the thinking side of their brain, and then they're no longer using that reactive side or that silly side and wanting to play. You don't get them bucking and kicking and stuff and having a spurt of energy as you're out in the show ring and you paid a whole bunch of money for this futurity entry, and now you just kind of blew the class because the horse decided that it was a spout of energy. So by doing all this stuff, making sure your horse is engaged in its mind with you, that's going to definitely help you in the show pen with that. And then it will also help you with your horse, because they're going to look to you then for direction, and then it's also going to help them if there's something that they might be scared of. They're going to look to you for reassurance and direction for that as well. So if you have that connection with your yearling, you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of the majority of the other people in the lunge line classes. Majority of them don't have horses that are this well behaved. It doesn't take that much to get a horse like this. Just being black and white with everything is the main thing, and sticking with it, and then just always being consistent anytime you work with them is going to be the biggest for that. So obviously, for the confirmation part, there's not much you can do as far as doing anything that's going to really up your score. I mean, you can definitely, you're going to groom them, make them look the best, set them up the best you can, get them in the best angles you can, do what you can that way. But as far as anything you can do, you physically cannot change their body for the judge to be able to change the way their conformation's built. So the confirmation portion you can't really do much about, except for maybe help muscle them up or so. The rest of it is all stuff that you can go ahead and build upon. Teaching them to set up and just working with that a lot, and getting them used to being able to stand still and go ahead and get them to trot with you. So I'm going to go ahead and ask him to back up. So he also knows how to back up a few other methods than just lifting the rope backwards. He'll also back up with me waving the stick here in front of him, or I can wave the rope here back and forth and he'll back up here, or if I were to kind of march towards him here, he'll back up as well. So those are other methods that he knows that I'm telling him to back up there. And I do like that he's got two eyes on me here, and he's kind of seeing what I'm going to ask him to do next. So there he kind of tried to creep into me and come closer, probably get the head scratch and stuff, but I'm keeping my lines black and white, and anytime he tries to come in, I'm going ahead and I'm correcting him instantly and putting his foot back there. So if you have a horse that moves really nice, which a lot of those that go to like Congress and stuff and are really well bred and come out of the womb loping and having a really fancy canter and trot and stuff, this is going to be really easy for them. If you have one that has a little bit harder time, you can help them out a little bit and teach them kind of how to use their body correctly to collect themselves up, but it's not going to be as easy for them as what it would be for like a better, higher quality, I guess maybe, yearling or baby is what it would be for that one that you're having to kind of work with a little bit. But you can still make them look tons better by doing this type of stuff, and you can make that one look better than one that might come out of a higher quality and come out as a nicer mover, because your other competition may not have prepped their horse like you did yours and get them to move around all collected like underneath on the lunge line here. So to start with, I always use a rope halter there. That's kind of one of my big training tools there that I like. Initially, when I'm first starting to train, I like to use the 4 knots and the stiffer halters there. So if I have to get after them, it's got a little bit more of a bite to it than what like the two rope softer ones are. But either or, you could use either or, but you definitely want a rope halter because you can definitely get their attention with that. The nylon ones, they'll pull against you, and they really are hard to get the respect from. So I like to make it as easy as possible on me. So by using a rope halter, I definitely can get more respect from them using that. So I kind of think of it as anytime I put a halter on my horse, I think of it as the halter's on, it's time for you to work. So anytime that halter is on, you are not allowed to do any of like the playful stuff like bucking, kicking, being obnoxious, and like what they would do is playing in the pasture, where if he was out in the pasture and didn't have his halter on, that's when he can do all that other stuff. He's got all the other time of day that he can be a doofus and play and stuff. But when he's got that halter on, it means business, and he's not allowed to do that, or he's going to go ahead and get reprimanded. So if you kind of do that from the very start and reprimand them for doing the bucking, kicking, and being all out of control, you're going to reduce the possibility of that happening in your class by a lot. Because if any time they've ever had that halter on, it's always meant business, and they've always had to go get put to work, and they've never been able to get away with bucking, kicking. It was never an option for them without getting a reprimand. It doesn't have to be much. You don't have to like beat the crap out of them, and just maybe a quick jerk with the rope and be like, hey, I mean business, and you can't do that. That's not okay. And then they're like, oh, okay, all right, well, that was uncomfortable. Let's not do that again. And just kind of keeping that as your black and white line there. And then eventually they'll learn that that's never an option for you to do. Is when I have this halter on, it means business and I have to behave. So you don't have the problem of your horse ever acting up on you then later on down the road. If you're doing that from them as like a weanling, yearling and stuff like that, they don't know any different when they get older and stuff. They never know that as an option is being able to get away with something like that. So he's really trying to come in and say hi to me, and he's getting kind of bored. So I'm going to go ahead and put his feet to work here. So I'm going to go ahead here. Got him at the end of my rope, and a lot of people, you'll see this, and it kind of, think of your horse as it goes around. You're going to want its body in a C shape. So horses have a tendency of wanting to, I guess, drop their shoulder. You'll hear people say that, drop their shoulder towards the inside of the circle. Well, a lot of it has to do with it's kind of somewhat our fault. So if we were to take our rope here and do what everybody tends to do, and that's lift our rope up and go like this and tell your horse to come on, I need you to come this way. Okay, as you're pulling this rope, you're pulling your horse into the circle. Okay, you're pulling your horse in and on top of you. So if you go like this, and if he were to come straight here, you see how he cut straight across, and he would have almost run my foot over there. And so he just completely dropped his shoulder into the circle there. Where if I were to go like this here, and I start, and I go to him, all right, buddy, we're going to go ahead and start lunging. So I need you to go, I'm going to tell you what direction to go. I'm going to point just in front of his nose. I need you to go out there. And you see how I'm starting to walk in the direction I need him to go. And so then he knows at that point. And then I'm going to constantly kind of take a little bit of a step towards his shoulder or his nose there and continuously drive him out to the outside. And that's going to push his shoulder to the outside. It's going to help get his body frame in the right shape that it needs to be in order to hold his body in the correct manner. So if you start out on a smaller circle, it's going to be way easier to be able to control your horse and get them in frame. And then as they're getting better at it, or as they are holding that frame together, the reward is going to be letting them out onto a bigger circle and letting them learn that, hey, if I hold this frame, then I get to go in a bigger circle, and it's easier for me to canter in a bigger circles. But if I'm doing this other stuff, it's harder for me to do in a smaller circle like this. So I'm going to go ahead and ask him to tilt his nose in towards me and get a little bit more of a head tilt towards the inside. And so I don't ever really want to take the rope here and pull it back like this, because that's pulling his shoulder in on top of me too. Where if I take the rope here and I pull it back towards his tail, this is going to be acting like if you were on his back and acting like a rein. And so he's going on the bridle. So you see him already starting to tip his nose back and tilt his nose back here. And if I were to come follow up here with my stick here, and I kind of lift back and ask him to go forward a little bit, this is no different than if you were to be on his back and ask him for his face. Okay, so if I lift up a little bit here and lift it towards his tail, and I still kind of drive him forward, I'm asking him for his face, and you'll see him give when he does here. When he decides to give, and wait here until he does. There, he kind of did, and then I'm going to release, ask for again. I really want him to learn to stretch his head down, is what I'm going to really look for here. So I can drive him forward, and then I'm waiting for him to stretch his head down. There it is. And then he does it, and I'm releasing him out. Okay? And eventually I'm going to work with this and see if I can get him to consistently hold that and get his head to stretch downward and collect himself up and be in a collected manner versus doing what the majority of the other yearlings do and tipping their nose to the outside and looking to the outside. He's trying to look to the outside right now, so I'm going to bump his head towards his butt here to get his attention back to me, because I don't want him to be focused on the outside. I need his focus on what I'm asking him to do. So there you go. There it is. Good boy. There you go. And then you see how he's starting to come bring his head down here? And he's all nice and collected. He's reaching up underneath himself with his hindquarters. All that. There you go. And he was one of those horses that would have been like a butt kick and fart and be a little doofus whenever we lunge. So for him to just be nice, easily trotting around like this, and this is just him coming right off the field. After I didn't even work with him yesterday, so he was just out of in the pasture. So, and he hadn't been being worked at all. So this is pretty good for him. Not doing anything there. So you see how nice and easy he's going. He's got his head down. He's getting the stretch there. If I need to tip his nose in a little bit, I'm just going to lift my rope up back towards his tail. Not backwards here, back towards this tail. It's always back towards this tail. And then I'm going to drive him forward with my whip here if you need to. There you go. And so if I'm going to ask him to canter, I'm going to go ahead and just ask him to go forward here. And I'm still walking towards him. And you see how he's nice and collected, and his head's getting tucked, and he's holding himself up. And I'm kind of doing a little bit of a moving my fingers on the rope here to help him as his front foot hits the ground. And that canter, I'll kind of do a little bit of a beat with my two fingers on the rope. There you go. So now you have a horse here. You have a horse that's got his head nice and low. His body's collected, and he's using his body in the correct manner that he's supposed to. And you're teaching your horse how to use his body correctly from the very get-go. So when you do go to get on them and ride them and stuff, you don't have to reteach them how to use their body, because you've already taught them from the ground on the lunge line by doing this, you know, driving them to the outside of a circle here, tilting the nose to the inside, getting the right shape to their body, asking them to go forward, driving them forward here, lifting the rope back here, driving them kind of into that bridle. You get the head to come down, the nose to kind of tuck back. He's collecting his body up. That shoulder doesn't drop. You see there? And then as he continues to hold it there himself, I just kind of let him out, and that's his reward for doing it himself and holding it there himself. I'm just letting him go out on the circle longer because it's easier for him to do than in a smaller circle. So if I ask for the canter, then I'm going to go ahead. Yep. Keep going. So you see how he's nice and staying collected here. His shoulder's not really dropping. There you go. Good boy. He's reaching up underneath himself. Good. Ooh. So just those little things like that is going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of what your competition is going to be by teaching your horse that from the ground. And they're just tiny little things that you can do, and it doesn't take much to do them. It's not hard work really, and you're teaching them how to use their body in the correct manner. So that's basically kind of what you can do. It would be a big game changer. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you liked it, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be making more of these later on down the road and be posting them. Just kind of keep an eye out on YouTube for more. Otherwise, you have a good day. Thanks.